All right, we've already had our first technical glitch, but now I have unmuted myself. Hello, everybody. I'm Steve Young. Welcome to a Woods Hole Film Festival Q&A for Songs for a Sloth, which you can see, if you haven't already, at woodsholefilmfestival.org. The festival is running virtually, and I think you know why, through August 1st. So check out Songs for a Sloth if you haven't seen it, plus all the many other wonderful films. I would like to thank all the sponsors and supporters who've made this festival possible. Special shout out for the sponsor of tonight's film that we're discussing, Songs for a Sloth, appropriately enough, Falmouth Pet Center. So thanks to Falmouth Pet Center, I actually looked them up online. No sloth supplies or food that I can see. Turns out sloths are not pets. The things you learn when you get yourself learned up to do a Q&A. So thanks again to Falmouth Pet Center. There are many other great supporters and sponsors who've helped this festival grow and flourish. Of course, this is an unusual year, and it's been a great effort for Woods Hole to make the leap to this virtual screening platform. They're doing wonderful things here and highlighting so many terrific films. If you like what you're seeing, consider becoming a supporter. They can sure use it. All the films in the film festival this year are eligible for both an audience and a jury award. So if you're seeing things you like, you can vote for them for the audience awards. You go for the feature films to the platform, and on the home image of each film, you'll see 5 stars next to the box that says watch later. You can make your pick there. 1 star is lowest, 5 is highest. Shorts get a slightly different system. Pass holders and ticket holders, I believe, are emailed information about how to vote. But when you see things you love, make sure your vote's in there so that these great filmmakers can get the accolades they deserve. We will be about 45 minutes this evening. I'll be chatting for a while with our team from Songs for a Sloth, and then we'll open it up to questions from the audience. And as you were just hearing, there's a Q&A section in Zoom where you can write in your questions, and I will then, God willing, if I'm paying enough attention, I will see them and promptly convey them to the film team, and we will be rolling along with a robust conversation with the people helping out from all over the place. So, and you do keep your audio muted. That's another housekeeping rule that we're pointing out. So thanks to everybody out there who's watching, and I want to thank and say hello to our team from Songs for a Sloth. We have currently 3 people. We may be joined by a 4th. But I would like it if each of you gentlemen could introduce yourselves, remind us of your role in the film, and also, because it's fun to play this game in the coronavirus world, where are you right now?
My name is Bradley Hasse, and I directed the film and edited the film, and also co-wrote it with Rich, and did a few other things here and there as well. And right now I'm in France, actually.
Across the pond. That's going to be hard to beat. Who else has got an exotic location as well as what they brought to the table for the film?
I'm Rich Hollman. I am in beautiful New York City. I mean, it's exotic if you're not from here. I co-wrote the movie with Bradley. I played the lead role and co-produced it, and also wrote a few original songs for it, sung from the perspective of the main character.
All right. And then we got Andy.
I'm Andy Whitlach. I'm coming from Brooklyn, New York. I was the cinematographer on the film. And yeah.
All right. Brooklyn, New York City, France. And I'm in New York City for what it's worth. But thank you all for joining in on this and coming from, and I know it's the middle of the night where you are, Bradley, so thank you for making that extraordinary effort. I wanted to mention briefly why I'm here and why I'm doing this. So I'm not a filmmaker. I'm a comedy writer by trade, have worked for David Letterman for a long time. I've written for The Simpsons, but I was the main subject of a documentary a while back called Bathtubs Over Broadway, which is how the Woods Hole people learned of me and met me, and they very kindly have asked me to do things since then, and I've been delighted to help out where I can. And they asked me, would you be interested in doing some filmmaker chats and Q&As? I said, sure, let me see what you got. And I looked through the roster of films, and it's an embarrassment of riches of wonderful things of all sorts. But when I read about Songs for a Sloth, I said, I think I need to look at this, and I think I'm going to need to talk to these people. I was fascinated by the notion of a comedy with music about an improbable subject. And so I said, yeah, sign me up for that. So I watched it. I was, let's just say I was not disappointed. I was delighted, impressed, and fascinated. I've got as many questions as people will have time for, but I'm sure we'll have a lot of questions from people out there as well. So we will be talking about the film with the assumption that people have seen it. If you haven't seen it, it's possible there could be a spoiler or two out there, but really I don't know that we could truly spoil it because it is such a visual and moment by moment and musical experience. So congratulations on this wonderful piece of work, and all of you brought to bear some amazing talent on it. I'm curious to get things started conversationally. What was the inspiration for this film? Is there an origin story about how it came together and went down the path to what we now see?
There's the story itself, but also the process of making a film. So Rich and I have been wanting to make a feature for a very long time. We've collaborated for years, and we were always trying to make something happen. And make a very long story short, it reached a point when we realized the financing for some of our other projects were just not going to happen. I think it was March something, and we decided we're just going to shoot in July, by July 1st, basically. And we said, yes, let's do it. So we started really writing a script then. We had some old scripts we took from. Basically, we just set out and did it. And our personal story kind of mirrors the story in the film as well, the main story there, which is we've always had the dream of making features, and we're always doing short form stuff instead, such as me doing commercials and shorts, and Rich also worked very much on the stage and acting and many other things and writing as well, but we always wanted to do feature films. So we finally said, you know what, it's either going to happen or not, let's just set out and do it. So we did it. And when we did it, the story, like I said, kind of mirrored that path. So we wanted to make something about somebody who always had this dream of theirs that they couldn't do. And then we ended up down this path. So, and Andy I've collaborated with many years as well. And I know he's always wanted to make a feature film. We've collaborated on some really fun stuff. And so when we decided to do this, he jumped on board as well, and we all made this as a team.
Very cool. So it's a case that you see examples of again and again. People know each other, get comfortable with working with each other, want to keep finding ways to do that. You'd been working on shorter form things. You said, we got to make the leap up to the full length feature. And you had elements sort of swirling that you found a way to put together and solidify. And well, this is a bit of a jump ahead, but if the versions of you guys from 2 years ago could see the film now, would you go, how did we get to that? Or would you go, yeah, that sounds like us?
I think that there's some specifics of the film I think we'd be surprised about, but I think we would not be surprised that it evolved a lot from where we were 2 years ago. I think in two ways. One, Brad and I met actually when I auditioned for him for a short film. I'm not sure what year, 2012, 13, something like that. 14 maybe. But so
15.
we knew 16. We shared like a sensibility, and I think, like Brad said, I've done a lot of theater, and I think I thought I knew maybe something about writing a screenplay based on plays, and I was completely wrong. And so I think that us 2 years ago, one of the biggest difference was that we gave ourselves a kind of nonstop screenwriting course. We watched movies, we talked about movies, we read screenwriting books, and part of Brad's actually really great influence on me was to like really hold off on writing dialogue, like really know what our story is, what our images are, what our beats are, what our acts are. And I was very anxious to write dialogue, and he was right to like pull the reins, because we would get somewhere fast that we had no middle, had no ending, you know, things like that. And so in those 2 years, and even in the time Brad just mentioned, from that March of 2019 to July when we started filming, we learned a ton. I mean, it's just, and a lot of our choices were shaped by, you know, budget and location, stuff we got, people we know, which is kind of nice. You know, the limits can help.
We called it a film camp, but it was like 3 weeks, basically. There's a week of prep, where you have like 4 or 5 days of prep. And then we shot in 11 days over 2 weeks. And we're all there all the time. And we'd wake up in the morning and be like, okay, we have to rewrite this scene coming up. We have to do this. And it'd just be this 2 intense, very intense weeks of filming. And in that time, a lot of stuff also reshaped, like Rich was saying, and stuff. So,
wow. So just a lot that you learn on the fly and adapt on the fly. And Andy, were you finding that your skills that you brought to this had to morph and change? Were you pushing the envelope in terms of what you were used to doing as this unfolded?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, I think Brad and I kind of started this sort of like frame for frame storyboard on the actual location. And things had changed so much throughout the production that by the end of it, we just kind of got into a rhythm of kind of setting up kind of general lights, doing the general blocking, and then and just kind of going for it. Yeah, I mean, a lot of credit to Brad. He didn't have a ton of support in terms of like assistant director or anything like that, but he you know, he really had the film in his head the whole time, and there was a lot of trust from the crew, and a lot of people believed in his vision of it. And yeah, I feel really proud with what we were able to come up with, given the budget and the time restraint.
Yeah, I'm sure it feels like you've been through something akin to a rather pleasant creative war, and you just had to, the battle plan goes out the window on day one, and then you're just fighting for your life. But if you're surrounded by great people and you kind of know a solid sense of your vision, well, you guys are all testament to the fact that you can make it through that kind of war and actually kind of be amazed with what you were able to do under the gun. So very nice story of just saying, we're going to make a film by this date, and we're going to just get as ready as we can. And we know once we get going, that's going to be a different experience. But I mean, it's very inspiring, and a lot of the message of the film, and we'll maybe get into this a little more, is about just deciding, all right, this is going to happen. Because there's this quote near the end of the movie, which I have somewhere here, about getting started is the hardest thing. And just once you get started, you know it's not going to be perfect, but that's okay. It's not going to be perfect, and you understand that. But you all sort of lived that. You just said, we're just going to get started on this. And I don't know if you think it's perfect or not, but to the viewer, we're
still rewriting it now, just so you know.
Okay. Yeah,
we're working on the next projects, and we're like, in Songs for Sloth, we did this, and this. It's like, oh, that actually really good. And we end up on this tangent for like 20 minutes, being like, I don't know why we're talking about this, but
you know, to speak to exactly what you're talking about, Steve, I just remembered this, and we will never show anybody this, but there was a much earlier version of the script that we went out to the location, and Brad just shot it. Did you shoot it on your phone?
Little point and shoot camera.
Little point and shoot camera. So we, in like 2 hours, we like filmed the entire movie in real time with me and the other 2 actors, and just to see what it would be like. And then Brad edited it together. Mm-hmm. We watched it, and it's terrible.
It's our mulligan. I walked away from that. So talking about like not being perfect, and we did that thing. It's basically like a table read, where it's just one wide shot every scene. Everyone had their scripts in hand. They're reading where they go, but it's in the location. So there's like a bit of a block, bit of a block, bit of a block, was able to show Andy and the rest of the crew. By the way, this is like 30% of our crew right here. So when we
Okay.
say crew, it's, so we did that, and I walked away that night wanting to throw up because it was, it was like our mulligan, right? But it still felt so, it did not feel like the film we wanted to make. Of course it
It
was.
didn't feel like it was up on its feet in any tangible way yet, but it will be a wonderful bonus someday on the DVD edition.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You know, you see it though, you watch it, and we went back and we did a lot of rewrites based on it. So basically it was like the Pixar method where they make a movie, they show it, and then they rewrite, and then do that over and over again until it's a much better movie. So that was kind of the idea behind that, is like, if we film this whole movie, before we film the movie, we'll have a chance to redo it. And we found that the characters are too close together, so we made them more polarizing. And we did a lot of things in there from that test that made it a much better film later.
So that was film version 0, and then you got yourself ready for version 1 and 1A and 1B and all that. But that's an interesting look into the process, because it is so daunting to just say, all right, we're going to jump into the deep end of the pool on this. And you said, let's just jump into the shallow end and paddle around and get wet and be used to being wet, and then we can worry about the deep end a little later. So I bet a lot of people who are just terrified to get started making a movie would be interested to hear that. Just like, make a fake version of the movie and see how it feels and what you didn't realize yet.
I say that all the time. Like, if you want to make something, even if it's a short film or whatever it is, or have an idea for a music video or anything, just take your phone and go film it just to understand it. And then you come back and edit and kind of get a basic idea for the story, and then you can kind of move forward. But having that immediacy of actually making something right away, like, really helps you jump forward and feel more emotionally attached to it, versus something where it's like, oh, I'll eventually do this, you know.
Andy,
so,
how much?
Before we move on.
Oh, sorry.
Before we move on to the process, I want to really shout out to Andy too, and also Kevin Deming, who was our gaffer / DIT / helping everything / assistant editor in the end. The two of them. So we had, you know, kind of this basic idea of how we're going to make this film visually, and I was going to go pretty simple for the sake of shooting a film in 11 days. And on every single corner, Andy, and also with the help of Kevin, just kept on pushing it further and further to make it more cinematic. And so that was like a huge thing of like being very thankful of having, you know, our small but mighty team around us, where like everything got better by everyone involved. Where like I'd be like, all right, I'm done with the shot. And he's like, let me take out the dolly now, or the Dana dolly now. We didn't have a dolly on set. Dana dolly now, and like add a little bit to it here or there. And so he kept on pushing and pushing. And so I'm like super thankful, because I thought we're going to have a very simple kind of film that we just kind of get captured and move on and make it all about the characters. But Andy made it also about the cinematography as well. So
excellent. Andy, you're one of the heroes, and I've encountered them here and there, who cannot let merely okay work be done on their watch. So that's why these guys want to keep working with you and with each other, because they all have that spirit of, I think B+ is not good enough. If we're going to do this, let's shoot for the A. So I love to hear about those stories. Comedically, this is kind of a wild ride. It is comedy that I would say is overlaid over serious issues, but just comedically, and I come into this as somebody with some comedy background. I guess in terms of the real issues here, what were you hoping that viewers would take away, if there was a message that you could explicitly say that the movie has?
I mean, I would say, I think you kind of mentioned it earlier, but definitely that the idea that your window in life to do the thing that you really want to do, that you're passionate about, the idea that that window closes before you want it to, is really a narrative that you tell yourself. And I think that, I wonder what it's like in other cultures actually, but in America, I think the message you receive a lot directly and implicitly growing up and into early adulthood is that you do great things early. You do it young, you learn young, and then you kind of execute on them in your early 20s. And then you go into kind of the rest of your suburban normal life after you've done your thing, you know. And I'm there's even I mean, we never really talked about this then, but there are, I think there's in some part of a Malcolm Gladwell book, there's this, he reinforces that idea that there are two types of I think he even says geniuses, but one is much more prevalent, and that is the early onset kind of you know, accomplishments. And for us, you know, we really like had to believe that that wasn't true, because we wanted to make this film, and we want to make more films. And Brad has a family, he has 2 kids. My partner was pregnant while we were making this movie. So it was a kind of an unacceptable thought to think that the theme of the movie isn't true, that this is our only shot and that's that. And I think that, you know, you talked about the comedy. One of the really hard things to do, you know, in theater, I think more so a script, a play, is also really tells you, the director, the performers, what the style and the tone are. Like what are the rules of the world in a way. And the screenplay can be done, I think, probably more so in so many different ways, different tones and styles. And so we knew this was going to be a comedy with a dramatic, you know, through line. But what is that comedy? How three-dimensional are these characters? Is the dynamic of the brother and sister kind of always pushing against me very jokey and overt, or is it more natural? And these are the kinds of things that we really, I think, started to learn while shooting. And in fact, I think one of the first scenes we shot, was only one scene, but we ended up reshooting because it was early in the process, and we realized it was just not in the same tone as the rest of it. So that's more.
And it was a horrible scene on top of that.
Nah.
So, and it was a horrible scene on top of that.
And it wasn't a great written scene.
Yeah.
Well, I love the idea of somebody saying, yeah, I was interested in this creative outlet when I was younger and I put it away, but you know what, maybe I need to revisit that, because there is this sort of ethos that, oh, you know, you take your shot at being a rock star when you're 20, and then the odds aren't going to make it, and then you get your respectable corporate day job and put away childish things and all that. But
Right.
it doesn't have to be that cut and dried. It's maybe your character will still have the day job, but maybe get up in the morning excited about this new element in his life, which he decided to not let lie fallow. So I'm sure a lot of people watching the movie, aside from being delighted by the comedy overlay on it, will also say, yeah, you know, I always wanted to do X, and this is just a reminder that I shouldn't completely write that off. So that is a potentially life-changing, very deep message that a lot of people would see in this movie. Family dynamics also a huge element in this, and I wondered to what degree any of that is drawn from autobiography. And I mean, it's hilarious, but it's also just like, oh, come on, oh, I wish they'd. I hope they round the corner on some of this stuff.
You know, it's funny when you co-write something and then you find, like, we both had our truths that would come out in the script, and it becomes very, very personal. But then we also found a lot of similar emotions and things like that between Rich and I that got in there. And for me, that the family dynamic is actually kind of an inner argument amongst different parts of my emotions throughout a certain process. It was kind of similar. My father passed away. I was living in Italy at the time. I was starting to write films. I was getting more into like getting finally into feature films. And when my father got sick, I moved home, and it felt like everything kind of stopped. So therefore that theme of like, okay, your time is done, everything kind of stopped and everything has to reset. And so you see that, of course, happen in the film itself. And then when it comes to all these arguments, it's basically an argument with myself of the like left side of the brain, the right side of the brain, and the practical side, and this kind of a whirlwind of like what to do here. I had to call my brother and be like, there's themes in this movie, like this, of course, is not us. Like, this is me arguing with myself. This because very close relationship with my brother, and this is not how we handled things amongst us. So this was very much kind of an internal process. So that was kind of extrapolating there. And then in that process of brainstorming, I was kind of looking like, what if I had an excuse, a more practical excuse, when I was going through this process of mourning and everything. And oddly enough, some weird spirit animal type thing came in to be like, well, if I had this opportunity to work this out with someone or something, and this talking sloth came about, and we kind of keep on going. So a lot of this stuff is kind of, for me at least, the biggest element for me that was into these characters is an internal dialogue going on with different parts of your personality, debating with yourself what you can or cannot do, how you should do it, and how to move forward and pursue something or not.
Andy, you're making everything look gorgeous, but are you also thinking, yeah, this reminds me of my family, or thank God this doesn't remind me of my family, or where do you fall on that?
Yeah, I have two older brothers, so the three sibling dynamic thing was definitely something that resonated a lot with me. But Barney is a very similar kind of character to my middle brother Alex. Uh, my older brother, kind of controlling things in the family. So the family dynamic, the troubled relationship with the father, which we all have complicated relationships with our dad, I think to a certain extent. That all really resonated with me. I think, honestly, to piggyback on top of pursuing the dreams part was really, I think for me, that part of the script and part of the story and the process was really just kind of accepting imperfection. And Brad and I had a conversation like really early on of just like, I'd want every setup to be perfect. I want it to be this, or I wanted to give Brad another, better idea. And he was just like, it's enough. Like whatever we have set up, like it's enough. We can roll with that and we can go through it. And by the end of it, like we were just kind of firing all cylinders. Yeah.
Yeah, the perfect is the enemy of the good and all that sort of thing. And you just have a lot of tough decisions moment by moment about how much time and money and light and energy do we have left and all that. But Richard, are you part of a family where you saw versions of your own life playing out with these characters?
Not, also like Brad, not really. Like, I think it was more, the story evolved. We had versions of these characters in other things we had tried writing, and it all just, they seemed to make a nice comedic and dramatic dynamic in this way. And also, I mean, one fact about the film is that all the locations were in and outside right behind Brad there, my parents' house. So they basically gave us for 2 weeks their house. All the paintings in the movie were paintings done by my mom. So yeah, so I, really very supportive parents.
Well, you lucked out there for sure.
Yeah.
But,
I guess this one I should put the disclaimer too that also my father is not this way, so it's very, very supportive and everything. But there is, regardless of that, like even if you have like that support, you still have certain things you want to live up to and certain practicalities and certain, they try to teach you certain things to make sure you have a good life ahead of you. And sometimes those come off as great support, and sometimes it comes off as like, oh, maybe I need to do this instead of that, and am I being foolish by pursuing these things and everything? So you still struggle regardless of how supportive your family is.
I feel like, Brad, you'd agree with this, but tell me if you don't, but I think that the force of the unseen father in the movie is us talking to ourselves, like telling ourselves to be more responsible and not, try to make a movie on a shoestring budget.
But also live up to your potential and all that. So, I mean, it's a whole ball of thorny things for sure. But as beautifully wrought as those themes are, I mean, it is a comedy, and there were things in here that just delighted me. Like the Barney is a professional cuddler. I know that's a real thing. I've heard about that, and I just thought, well, that's just perfect. And like Richard, you get on, you do get on your head and do a handstand, a headstand to slow down your heart rate or something before doing a song. I just thought that's crazy, but seems to have some air of authenticity to it. I love it when things were not overdone and not hit too hard, and you could just notice it, but it isn't like gonna be like punctuated with a wacky sound effect or whatever. But I think in some ways the strangest meta comedy in this movie is something I only realized much later. I was doing a little Googling, trying to do due diligence on knowing at bare minimum something about sloths. There are no sloths in North America. This is a complete meta level fictional element that is never pointed out in this movie. That whole thing, all the characters seem real, all the situations seem real. This is a 100% made up fantastical element.
That is true. That is absolutely true. And we had talked earlier about different animals, possibly. The first version was a bird, but a fictional bird. But then we thought the sloth really fit with our theme, and metaphorically in terms of moving slowly towards your goals. And also, frankly, they're just likable and fun to look at, and the sloth puppet looked great.
Shout out to Folk Manus Puppets for donating their puppet before in the past, and they were all on board for this, and they had that beautiful puppet, and we're like, okay, this all works out. But it does add an air of mystique to it all. We tried to call attention to it though with the lawyer when he talks about the North American sloth specifically. And we're like, they exist here? And it's like, well, where else would the North American sloth be? So we wanted to make sure that people knew that we understood.
Well, I enjoyed that little Easter egg because suddenly I'm like going down a Google rabbit hole and finding out, well, there used to be an enormous ground sloth like 50,000 years ago that's extinct or something. But okay, apparently all sloths are in Central and South America. So these guys have really put one over on me, and I wonder how many viewers are going to ever realize that. I mean, it's such a subtle thing. I really applaud you for just saying we're not gonna lay too many clues out there for people to worry about this.
But that's why we wanted to call it out, because if people like that searching online now, they get so angry. So I was like, someone's gonna write to this and be like, that doesn't exist, and how dare you? And I'm for this. Yeah.
That's so great. I mean, that would be really the greatest thing that could happen is if lots of people get angry at us.
For a fictional sloth.
Well, I'm guessing the movie said at the end, copyright 2020. So it must have been sort of locked down and finished really just before the world kind of changed and turned inward here. And I don't know, have you ever had the opportunity to have a large scale public screening where you got to see how a big audience really treats it?
We had no, and it's tough. It's bittersweet, it's like tonight would have been a nice screening. We'd be out there with a drink in hand, and we'd probably all be up there in Cape Cod.
I would have loved to be in Woods Hole there too. Boy, I like it there. But yes, I'm sure that day will come, and there is that fear, adrenaline, excitement of how are 400 or 800 people gonna, as a living, breathing organism, react with your work. It's I've seen it. I've been enough to film festivals, and the movie I was in, which I didn't make, but I still felt like, yikes, here we go, where the roller coaster is taking off. How are we going to be at the end of that ride? So I certainly wish that for you guys, and I'm sure it will be a very satisfying experience when it comes. But I liked also that you made it a sloth when you didn't have to, because it allows you to do that that elegant thing of making a title that does double duty. And technically, yes, we're saying, oh, there are these animals over in this woods, and we got to save them, and we got to, come on, guys, let's get together. We'll write some songs that'll raise awareness and money. But also, of course, as you were starting to allude to, it's more than that. It's one or more of the characters who need to hear something motivational that gets them out of the slowed path they've gone into. Would you say it's all of the siblings, or would it be Max in particular? I know he has the songwriting deferred dream, but it seemed like it could maybe apply to all of them.
I think it could, but I think, Max takes the cake on this one, where it's very much everyone else, I think, is going to go back and have somewhat of a similar life than they had before. But we hope that after this, Max gets into that songwriting workshop and carries on and has a more of a drastic change to his life, even if he got there slowly. And so I would say that he's very much the driving force behind mirroring the way of the sloth.
All right, so Max is the uber sloth, but maybe Barney and Jenna can at least have jolted themselves out of their complacent feelings about, I know who I am versus my siblings, and I just put them in a box, and that's how they're always going to be. So maybe there's some progress, however slow, for them as well. But I did think, once I had realized this stuff about sloths and was going back and thinking about it again, I did enjoy that. But I mean, there were great absurd things in this, like, and I mentioned the like professional cuddling, and there are other things like the zombie paintball moment and the sort of music video for the juice that turns into the Save the Sloths is just, terrific. But the musical element, we actually don't have too much more time here. Anyone watching, if you want to get a question in, now's the time to put it into the Q&A box, because we'll be wrapping up in just a few minutes. But I got to talk about the music, which Richard, that is all you, music and lyrics, and obviously performing. Was this something that you thought going in, oh, definitely this is going to?
That's a really great question, because originally we knew that given the theme and this character's slowness to getting to the thing they love, that really spoke to kind of, a latent artist. But we had all different kinds of ideas of what the art was, photography, different kinds of design, illustrator. And then I honestly don't remember how we first talked about music, but let
me jump in real quick, and then Rich, you could go from there. I just want to say that I was like, man, he held this back from me this whole time, right? So we're writing this thing, different artists, like, well, maybe I could do music. Yeah, I write some and I sing some. And then he started writing stuff. I was like, what have you been doing this whole time, waiting to telling me that you're an amazing songwriter and that you could like crank these things out and have both like hilarious, fun, great lyrics, and then a very serious song at the end, great performance. And that very first song that's in the film, when he's performing and in the script, everyone's like, oh my gosh, like I didn't know he was this great, was us on set, where we're all standing around and all of a sudden we're like, oh wow, like we're getting chills and everything. So
was that the Don't Let Me Die?
Yeah.
And so that in the movie, that was not intended to be a real take, it just worked out that you could use it?
No, it was intended to be a real take. I'm just saying that, like, you kind of, he writes the songs and all of a sudden he sends it over with recording. It's like, oh, that sounds really good, this is exciting. I'm like, yeah, like, why didn't you tell me ahead of time you're an amazing songwriter? And then on set, we knew the kind of reaction and stuff we're going to get and when we're supposed to be emotionally, but I think we all went through that for real emotionally, being like, oh wow, we're working with a really good songwriter here. Grayson Ross and Joe Labadia were the executive producers on it through their company Pudding Boy Productions as well. And so they came on board around the same time that Andy did in the summer, where it's like, we're going to do this thing and it's about a songwriter. And I think when Grayson was on set too, we've been talking about this for a while. All of a sudden, Rich starts to sing and he turns to me and he's like, this is amazing. So Rich, I'll let you take it over from there, but I know you wouldn't say all that. But I was kind of mad where I was like, we just wasted so much time talking about all these different artists when all along you had to be like, I'm an amazing songwriter, we'll make it about a songwriter, duh. Let's go. It's easy.
That's very sweet. And I have to say that in terms of like just personal growth, and this is also why I value Brad so much as a creative partner, because I trust him and I have been writing songs. I mean, this is where the character Max and me are very, very parallel, is that I've been writing songs for a long time, and I've always been an actor first, improviser, writer, and I just don't really play my songs for anybody. It never quite fit into my life, but also there's just that fear. And I've written music for other things. I'm very good at assignments. I scored a play once. I've written music for podcasts, things like that, but just in terms of writing my own songs. And so when I played that first song and recorded it on my phone and sent it to Brad, and his reaction was just so great. I mean, it's like exactly what you want to hear when you show somebody something.
Right.
So it's emboldened me, and I've been writing a lot of songs since we made the movie, and I'm looking for time to record them. I mean, the third song in the movie I actually got professionally recorded with an amazing studio guy that was referred to me by a friend of mine who runs a record company, and that experience was also amazing. Just being in a recording studio and doing a song that way was really fun.
Yeah, and feeling like, ooh, do I even belong here? But yeah, if you got a good song, you belong here. So get over that. And in the movie, when you're doing songs, did you have to do many takes, or were you just kind of nailing it right away? And Andy could say, okay, I guess that one looks fine. Let's move on. Or did Brad say, well, could be better?
I mean, I think I was the hardest on myself in terms of how it sounded, but we did a lot of takes for different, angles and, the normal reasons, I guess. Yeah.
Well,
we shot it in an interesting way. Like, we didn't do playback. We didn't really have the time or the ability to kind of do that, given the process and I was changing and stuff. So we actually filmed everything live, like laved up, boom mic and everything. And then we had to figure out with Andy kind of angles that could complement that when it's going to be out of sync with a slightly different tempo for each take and everything. So basically everything was like one wide shot that we would do. And once we finished that, we're like, that's our master take. We know that we have the song from beginning to end, which was interesting, being like, we have to nail this beginning to end. And then we would come in and kind of do abstract angles of the hands or strumming or the mouth singing, but on sync and then forced into sync later. So that was an interesting hurdle to do, but one that we had to kind of practically do because we weren't going to record in a studio ahead of time or anything like that. So that was it was interesting to do that. Yeah. I do a lot of music videos, and to do this live without playback was interesting. So yeah, so handing out to compliments to Rich and Andy for, this is the take. We got to film it. It has to work.
Right.
You have a couple times to do it, make sure it works, and that's it. So
making it all look natural and easy and seamless and all that. Yeah, I mean, there's a whole other levels of artistry there for sure. We're probably close to wrapping up. I'm going to keep talking until they tell me to definitely stop, because I've got more questions here. I mean, I've got this whole clipboard full of questions, but I did want to also mention, speaking of music, I thought the score, aside from your songs, was also very evocative and interesting and a great part of the film. And my compliments to the composers there.
They're called Nelson Patton, and then Dave Nelson from Nelson Patton was kind enough to give us that whole, give them their library of work as the duo, but then also him individually with everything he had. So that was, and that changed a lot of our story. Like, I met them months before filming the movie. I was listening to it over and over, and it was actually one morning when I was writing that I was listening to it and had the trombone sounds in there, and it was a little more funky, and that's when like the talking animal came back, inspired by that music. So when it was time to score the film, I came to him and I was like, can we please use your music for this film, because you helped us rewrite the film with your music in the first place. So like it very much inspired the emotions of many, many things and a lot of the environment. So
well, I thought that was terrific and distinctive, and I could see why that would spark your creativity there. I saw a question go by briefly. I don't know where it went, but one question.
That question is from my father-in-law. And he just wrote, on a lighter note, will Andy ever finish his beer? And will Vanessa have a bigger part in the next movie? I'm curious, Steve, if you know who Vanessa is in the movie. And don't be ashamed if you don't.
Well, I know Bradley has a cameo in the movie.
Yeah.
and I'm trying to think of who can I figure out is Vanessa, because it was really a very well-defined small cast. What am I missing?
So she was the disembodied voice I was speaking to, who was my boss.
Oh,
The phone, and the one time we hear her, that was the voice of my partner Shelley, who's in the next.
okay. Well, maybe there'll be another whole project about that drama, because I mean that sounds like a difficult situation you were up against there. But and my regards to Shelley.
Yes, the answer is yes. Vanessa will have a bigger role in the next movie.
The cast, the siblings seem to have such terrific chemistry, and of course it's excellent acting and fine writing, obviously. But to what extent was there improv in these scenes? Because sometimes it just felt so organic and natural that I was thinking, I'm not quite sure if I'm watching a movie anymore, or if I'm just watching real life sometimes.
Well, yeah. So Brian McCarthy and Ava Eisenson rounded out the cast there, and then the scene with the lawyer was Arian Moayed. All of them are fantastic, and same way with like the crew. There's a lot of like people I've worked with before, and we have a shorthand. Rich has worked with all of them, or is at least friends with all of them. So there's that chemistry already there, built in, which helped us get to the set like running. So that's kind of the background of like having everyone that's already clicked in the first place. Then when it comes to improv, yeah, before we'd ever seen what we do, we would block it, kind of rewrite on the moment. So that's a little bit of improv, or let's say rewriting instead of improv, because we didn't film it yet. But then once we got into it, we did do kind of the safety takes and also the go with it and have some fun with it and go off on that. Originally, we wanted to shoot this with 2 cameras cross shooting, and we were not able to do that. But the scene, for example, where they're setting up the banquet tables, there's big arguments, they're running back and forth. We were able to shoot that in a very messy, fun way. Andy running around, catching them, and me kind of editing on the fly, being like, okay, we have this and this, this and this. So they did a lot of improv there. And that scene was like 2 lines in the script. And all of a sudden we shot for like 30 minutes with like golden stuff. And it's like, it was just a lot of fun. So anytime there was a chance for improv, so congrats like to all the actors. I love watching what they could do and making it much better.
We have a lot of behind the scenes photos of Andy supporting his body in all these different ways to get a shot from different angles, because we're just moving all over the place. I mean, down on your knees, like standing on top of stuff all over the place. It's pretty great.
Yeah, that table scene was pretty excellent, I got to say. Here is a question which has been nagging at me, and I don't know if it's just a delightful loose end that you'll leave unexplained, or if there's a whole other dimension here. Max is digging to find the dead dog, and he says the late father said one of his last words, "Go dig up Tony the dog," and he does this at the beginning, and he's doing it again at the end. Nothing seems to come of it. What are we to take away from that?
I think in our minds, the takeaway, or what, Brad? What do you?
No.
Okay.
I was scratching an itch.
Yeah. In our minds, the idea was that is who the father preferred most, the dog, and he wanted to be buried with him. So that was the idea behind looking for the dog, so they could, But of course, when the father says that, he's past the point of real lucid talking. But that was the idea, and I have wondered if that comes across, and if that even if it matters necessarily.
Well, I was thinking, I wonder if he'll find that the father buried a large stash of cash, and he'll find that, and that will save the sloth preserve or something.
That's a great ending.
That's a really great ending.
Rich, let's go back and keep, like I said, we're still rewriting this thing. So
all right. Well, on that note, great. I think it's we've probably it's been almost an hour effortlessly, and I think Woods Hole needs us to go on with our lives. And Bradley, I know you're well into the early morning over there in France, and I'm sure you would like to lie down again for a little while. But
I'm happy to be here. This is exciting.
A wonderful film and a wonderful conversation, and I'm just so delighted to talk to you all about this. If you're watching at home, don't forget to vote for your favorites, for your audience award favorites on the website. The festival running through midnight on August 1st. So load up on all sorts of great films there. And my thanks to the Woods Hole team for inviting me to be part of this. It's great, great fun. And I hope to meet you all in person someday in a slightly better world. But until then, this was an excellent beginning. So thanks to all of you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate
All
it.
right.